Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. This is MUSAU MattmeachamJR broadcasting from Kampala, Uganda, East Africa. It's a beautiful day. I've just had my coffee. I feel pretty good. And I thought I should give a video or I should give a broadcast. I think what I want to deal with outside of my major concern, which if you've been following me, my major concern is the equation E equal MC squared. I've written a children's play entitled E equal MC squared rock and roll, which we will begin to start work on it very soon in the lovely country of Rwanda. Now, presently, I'm in Uganda, and this is where the offices of MUSAU Consulting International, and that's where our offices will be located in Uganda. Well, I thought about a lot of things as to how I would do broadcasts, and I thought about the human condition. And the question that I was asking was, why does God allow certain type of things to happen to human beings? And I thought that I wanted to do a series or on that particular concept. That question is, why did God bring suffering on human populations? Being that I'm African American, of course my concern is the history and the sociology of the African American. But then when I study history, I look into history and look at what a man by the name of Adolf Hitler, when I think about what this man did to the aspect of humanity, then my heart reaches out to the human population. Now, there's one critical question that I think that should be asked, and I think we avoid this question when we look at human suffering. What we do is we look at the human suffering and we cry and moan and discuss and debate about. But I think there's a critical question that should be dealt with when we look at human suffering. I think that the first thing that one must ask is why? Why was Africa mistreated in earlier centuries? And the people were mistreated. And their lands were taken, and the minerals, the gold, the luxuries were taken away. But then think about recent history. When Adolf Hitler made a purge on Europe, where he would go and get families, human beings, and he would take these human beings and treat them as though they were insects. He would dissect them. The inhumane methods that he dealt with these human beings. And then one's heart ring out to this, their suffering too. Suffering is suffering. But then the question that we really never deal with maybe we don't want to accept the truth of the answer. Why? Why did God do these things to these people? Okay, let's say you got 6, 7 million human beings, 6, 7 million so-called Jews, or whatever the Gestapo or whatever the Nazi government called these people, and they would round them up like cattle and animals, ship them in trains like sheep, and bring them into concentration camps and treated them so terribly, and they suffered desperately. It is a terrible suffering that these people suffered under Hitler's campaign. And we look and see what happened to these people. And if we're all human, tears come to our eyes. And we ask, how could you do this? Why would a man do this? How could a man do this? And why would God allow a man to do this to another human being? Here's the question. The question is this, and it's a very serious question. It's a question without sentiment. It's just a question. And that question is this: why did God do this to these people? The next question is, what were these people doing to deserve such a punishment? Are you to say to me that God, that who's all powerful, would just randomly choose human beings and put them with that kind of suffering that the people went through in those concentration camps prior to World War I? Or the suffering of being defeated by the European when the European took over Africa, and how the European acted against these African people. And you say, why would God bring pestilence? I think that's a critical question. Okay, we look and we moan and we debate and discuss and we talk about the terrible things that human beings do to each other. But then the question is, those who are defeated in battle, or those who are defeated in whims of insane warship, what were those who suffered? Those who went through the extreme suffering, what did they do to be worthy of this type of tribulation? So those are the type of questions that I would like to consider. I would like to consider these type of things. But I think once we can look at these issues, then it would help us to form ways of making the human condition a better human condition. So I'm still on my venture of E equals MC squared. And I think that if God would deliver a formula to a man, and this formula would lead to such mass destruction, then there is also a formula that God has that exists in the reality. In our reality, there is another formula that exists that says, if one man can not create, So if one man can discover a formula which can destroy humanity, then God has provided another formula where man can save humanity. And that's the formula I'm working on. If you have been following me in my broadcasts, you will observe, you can recall that I have come up with 3 variables, which will be the variables that I will use to play with to see if I can discover that formula that is already here. The formula to save mankind exists. It existed even before I was in my mother's womb. Just like the formula E equals mc squared, the formula which Einstein discovered or detected. That formula existed before Einstein ever came into this world. So there is a formula that exists. And it exists through all eternity. And that formula is a formula to maintain, to ensure that humanity is not destroyed. Now, humanity, when we talk about humanity, we're talking about billions of human souls. And we know that there are certain rules and regulations that we all have to, that exists, that says if you go in that direction, then you have this consequence. If you go in the other direction, then you may have a consequence, or you may have a reward, depending on what choice you make as a human being. You're picking choices that determines your destiny. Yes, many will die. That's all part of. I guess that's all part of creation. Yes, many will die. But then once we can determine and accept death, then it's not such a difficult issue to deal with. Once we accept the fact that death is a reality, okay, now, death is a reality in a sense, because we never die. Okay, all we do is pass from one reality into the other. Let's talk about that. Let's consider all of us, all mammals. We're all, once the egg and the sperm unite, then human form or life form begin to develop within the womb of the mother. During the period of the development of the fetus in the womb, there is a lifespan and a reality that exists in the fetus, though it has never seen the earth. So when it passes from the fetus to the earth, then it is into it. The fetus must die, and for the child to be born. So as the fetus dies, then the child is born. Now, when man dies, he goes into another form. So I guess if we can accept the reality of death, and knowing that it is a reality, death is it's just like it. That's like infinity. Watch this, if you can follow me. Death is like infinity. Watch this. In one of my previous broadcasts, I talked about infinity. What is infinity? Infinity means it never ends. In other words, you cannot get to the end. It continues. But watch it, and watch if you followed me before. But look at this. Let's consider this one But this is part of a ruler, and this is 1 inch. My two fingers, 1 inch. And if we had an instrument, if we were able to design an instrument, and it's possible that that instrument possibly can be designed, and who knows, it may have already been designed. But if we look at this and say that that's an inch, and we cut slices, we can slice, depending if we had the instrument, we can slice forever between these two spaces. Remember, if you heard what I just said, we can slice forever if we have the instrument between 1 and 2 inches. In other words, we can begin slicing, and we will never get to this point. That's what we call infinity. But watch this. If we look at this, and let's go like that. Now, when we perceive with our eyes, are you saying to me that the space between this and this is the same as this and this? Is the space between this and this the same as this? The space between both of these, the space is infinity between those two spaces and those two spaces. So we're saying, okay, there's an infinite distance between 1 inch and 2 inch. But there is also an infinite distance between 1 inch and 200 inches. You see what I'm talking about? These are the type of concepts that you have to, okay, if I'm trying to detect a formula that can save mankind, I have to look at it from all these different angles. And then the mind has to be open. The mind has to be open. How do you take all these things in and then regurgitate these things out? So that's my discussion for today. The thing is, basically, I'm working on the formula E equal MC squared. I'm working on a formula that can save humanity. And if you have followed me, I have already discovered the 3 variables. And I'll give those 3 variables to you again. 1 is I for infinitive. 2 is C for communication. And 3 is L for love. Now, it's quite obvious that we were speaking. It's easy for me to talk of love because then, we're a human being. The compassion, even in the wild, the deer has compassion for the child. So we know that as far as the human, as far as the living entity is concerned, that thing, compassion, is quite evident. It is quite understandable that it would be in this format. The variable L standing for love. So we got love, we got communication, and we got infinity. We're going to play with those variables, and we will discover a formula that will save humanity. This is MUSAU MattmeachamJR, broadcasting from Kampala, Uganda, East Africa. Signing off.